Go back to cleaning. Wait, hold on. She's valid.
Put that thing away before someone mistakes you for a real fighter. Victor Lowe's voice carried across the Las Vegas weigh-in room, cutting through camera shutters and the low chatter of trainers. He held Denise Ward's silver fight license between two fingers as if it were something she had pulled from a trash can. Several people laughed. Denise stood beside the scale in a plain, gray tracksuit. The same woman many of them had seen emptying wastebaskets and mopping sweat from the local gym after closing. At 42, she was older than every fighter listed on the main card. Her knuckles were scarred, her posture straight, and her face gave Victor nothing. He flipped the license onto the registration table. "Cleaners stay after the fights," he said. "They don't belong in them." A young official stopped writing. One camera shifted away from the sponsored athlete at Victor's shoulder and focused on Denise. Victor noticed, and his smile widened. Public humiliation worked best when there was proof that someone had witnessed it. Denise picked up the license carefully. A scratch crossed its silver face, but the commission seal and her name remained clear. Denise Ward. The weigh-in coordinator checked the wall clock. The card would lock in 23 minutes. Once it did, no late correction could restore a fighter to the evening's lineup. "Ms. Ward," he said quietly, "your name isn't on the active bracket. It was yesterday." Victor gave a tired sigh, performing patience for the room. Rankings change. Medical decisions happen. She knows that. Denise's gaze settled on the closed folder beneath his hand. The tab carried her boat number. Victor drew the folder closer before anyone else could read it. That small movement changed the room. The laughter faded not into silence, but into uncertainty. Denise had spent years around fighters who tried to hide fear behind motion. Victor had just made the same mistake. She rested the silver license on the table. "Who removed my name?" "The commission approved the card," Victor replied. "Then there will be a record." His smile thinned. "You don't understand how these events work. I understand a locked bracket." Her voice never rose. "And I understand that my medical clearance was accepted Monday." A commission representative near the doorway lifted his head. Victor's sponsored fighter glanced sideways at him, suddenly less comfortable beneath the bright weigh-in lights. Victor tapped the folder with one finger. "You were never cleared for the main event." Denise reached into her worn canvas bag, but she did not pull anything out. Not yet. Instead, she faced the official controlling the registration computer. "My name is Denise Ward. License number 7419. I am requesting the original eligibility file before the card closes." Victor laughed again, louder this time. "You hear that he asked the reporters. She thinks mopping floors gives her authority to order a commission review." "No," Denise said. "The license does." The clock changed. 22 minutes. The computer official hesitated. Victor leaned across the table and lowered his voice, but the nearest microphone still caught him. "If you keep pushing this, you won't have a job at my gym tomorrow." There it was, the line he should never have crossed. Denise had cleaned that gym through injuries, late rent notices, and nights when she could barely straighten her left hand. Victor knew she needed the work. He had counted on that need, keeping her obedient. But Denise slid her employee key onto the table beside the silver license. "You can threaten the mop," she said. "You can't threaten the record." A chair scraped behind Victor. The commission representative approached and introduced himself as Aaron Bell. He asked the computer official to retrieve the archived version of the bracket, not the copy currently on the table. For the first time, Victor stopped smiling. He reached toward the keyboard. Aaron blocked his hand without touching him. "No edits," Aaron said. "Not until we compare the files." Victor's sponsored athlete backed away from the scale. Reporters raised their phones. The registration screen refreshed, displaying a file that had been saved 3 days earlier. Denise's name appeared near the top. Beside it was a status code no one in the room had expected to see. Victor immediately demanded that the screen be closed. Aaron did the opposite. He requested Denise's complete eligibility record and called commission headquarters. The answer on the other end made him glance first at the silver license, then at the folder Victor had tried to hide. "We're reopening the main event," Aaron announced. Victor's face hardened. "You can't do that." "The commission can," Denise said. What happened next would cost Victor far more than control of one weigh-in room. But the truth had not begun with the silver license. and it had not begun that morning. It had begun months earlier after midnight inside a nearly empty fight gym when Denise Ward found her name missing from a ranking card that Victor Lowe believed she would never see. 4 months earlier, Denise Ward was alone beneath the fluorescent lights of Lowe's fight gym, pushing a mop across the edge of the practice ring. It was nearly midnight. The last fighters had gone home, leaving damp towels, empty water bottles, and strips of athletic tape stuck to the floor. Denise moved slowly, favoring her left knee whenever she thought no one could see. Cleaning was not how she had imagined returning to a fight gym. For almost 18 years, Denise had competed in small arenas across Nevada, Arizona, and California. She had never become famous, but she had earned something harder to manufacture a reputation for arriving prepared, making weight, and finishing every bout she accepted. Then her mother suffered a stroke. Denise stopped traveling, abandoned 2 promising fight offers, and took whatever work allowed her to stay in Las Vegas. By day, she drove her mother to therapy and managed the apartment they shared. At night, she cleaned Victor Lowe's gym. The job barely covered rent and medication. It also let Denise train after everyone left. Victor knew about those sessions. He had watched her working the heavy bag once and told her she still had respectable timing for her age. Then he reminded her that private use of the equipment was part of her cleaning arrangement, not a path back onto his fight cards. Denise had accepted the insult without answering. Silence kept the paycheck coming. But inside the locker she used for cleaning supplies behind a stack of folded rags, she kept her silver fight license wrapped in an old white hand towel. The commission had issued it after Denise passed her annual physical vision screening neurological review and required sparring assessment. She had paid every fee herself. The license was not a souvenir. It remained active. Whenever exhaustion made her consider giving up, Denise held it beneath the locker room light and remembered the promise she had made to her mother she would not confuse sacrifice with surrender. That night, the mop handle struck a plastic clipboard someone had shoved beneath a bench. Denise bent down and pulled it free. A ranking card had been clipped to the front. Most of the names were familiar fighters scheduled for a regional tournament Victor was helping promote. The event offered one nationally streamed main bout enough exposure to revive a stalled career. Denise found her own name in the qualifying column. Someone had drawn a line through it. Beside the mark were 2 handwritten words, medically inactive. Denise read them twice. Her medical clearance had been approved 6 days earlier. A door opened near Victor's office. Denise slid the clipboard back under the bench as Victor entered the gym with his sponsored fighter and 2 representatives from an athletic apparel company. Victor was dressed in an expensive navy jacket, still performing the polished version of himself he presented to sponsors. He noticed Denise near the bench. "You're behind tonight," he said. "The locker rooms are finished. I'm doing the ring area now." Victor's attention dropped briefly toward the clipboard. "Then stick to the ring area." One of the representatives asked why a cleaner was still wearing hand wraps beneath her rubber gloves. Victor smiled before Denise could answer. "Old habit," he said. "Some people have trouble accepting when their competitive years are over." The group continued toward his office. Denise resumed mopping, but the words on the ranking card remained fixed in her mind. She had not been promised a place in the tournament. No fighter was owed one. But medical status came from the commission, not a trainer with a pen. At 12:15, Denise completed her shift and waited until Victor's office lights went dark. She retrieved the clipboard again. The ranking card carried no commission seal, only the gym's internal heading and Victor's initials at the bottom. Denise did not take it. Removing the original would give Victor a reason to accuse her of theft. She placed it on the bench beneath the brightest ceiling light and photographed the entire page with her phone. Then she took one closer photograph of her crossed-out name. The next morning, Denise called the commission records desk during her mother's therapy appointment. She gave her license number and asked whether her status had changed. The clerk checked twice. "Your license is active," he said. "Medical clearance is current through the end of the season." "Is there any restriction beside my name?" "No." Denise wrote the answer in a small notebook she used for medication schedules and household expenses. She asked whether tournament eligibility records could be reviewed by a fighter. "After the promoter submits the preliminary bracket," the clerk explained. "But once the final card locks, corrections become difficult. Watch the filing date." The preliminary bracket was due in 9 weeks. Denise returned to the gym that evening expecting Victor to mention the ranking card. Instead, he had moved the clipboard into his locked office. A new schedule had also been taped beside the cleaning closet. Denise's shifts had been reduced from 5 nights to 3. No explanation was given. By the end of the month, she was choosing which bills could be paid late. She told her mother the reduction was temporary and began taking extra cleaning work at a dental office on Sundays. She did not mention the crossed-out name. Her mother already carried enough guilt over the fights Denise had missed. Telling her about the tournament would turn hope into another expense neither of them could afford. Still, Denise trained. She ran before sunrise, completed her mother's therapy exercises beside her, and practiced footwork in the apartment courtyard after dark. At the gym, she used only the minutes allowed under her work agreement. She kept records of every session and attended the commission-approved sparring assessments Victor assumed she had stopped pursuing. Each time her clearance was renewed, Denise placed the confirmation beside the silver license inside her locker. Victor began promoting his sponsored fighter as the tournament's obvious main event choice. Posters appeared around the gym. Cameras followed her training sessions. Sponsors delivered new gloves and matching warm-up clothes. Denise cleaned around all of it. Then, 5 weeks before the preliminary bracket deadline, Victor approached her while she was wiping bloodless scuff marks from the ring canvas. "I heard you called the commission," he said. Denise kept the cloth moving. "I checked my status. You don't need to do that through them. I manage eligibility here. The commission manages my license." Victor crouched beside the ring close enough that no one across the gym could hear him. "This job has been useful to you," he said. "Don't make me reconsider the arrangement." Denise stopped wiping. Victor waited for an argument. She gave him none. She folded the cloth, climbed down, and opened her cleaning locker. The silver license was still inside, but the confirmations she had stored beneath it were gone. Someone had searched the locker, and for the first time, Denise understood that the false mark on the ranking card had not been a careless mistake. Victor was not waiting for her career to end. I was helping it disappear. Victor Lowe had built his reputation on being the man who could turn overlooked fighters into marketable names. His office walls were covered with photographs of championship belts, celebrity visitors, and athletes standing beneath sponsor banners. At charity events, he spoke about discipline and second chances. He offered free beginner classes to veterans twice a year, always when local cameras were present. People trusted him because he understood how trust looked from across a room. Inside the gym, Victor controlled access to everything that mattered. He recommended fighters to promoters, assigned sparring partners, approved training hours, and submitted preliminary information for local cards. The commission made final decisions, but it relied on trainers and promoters to provide accurate records. That space between recommendation and approval was where Victor held power. Denise had seen him use it before. Fighters who attracted sponsors received better practice times and safer opponents. Those who questioned him were described as unreliable, difficult, or medically questionable. Most stayed quiet. A trainer did not need to officially ban a fighter. He could simply stop returning calls until every deadline passed. 3 nights after Denise discovered her locker had been searched, Victor posted a new rule beside the ring. Employees were prohibited from using gym equipment outside scheduled classes, including after-hours training. The rule applied to everyone on paper. Only Denise had been training after hours. She read the notice, removed her hand wraps, and began cleaning the heavy bags. Victor watched from his office doorway, waiting for her to protest. "You understand why this is necessary," he said. "For insurance. For safety." Denise nodded toward the sponsored fighter practicing combinations inside the ring. "She trains after closing. She's under contract." The distinction had nothing to do with safety, and both of them knew it. Denise folded the notice along its loose bottom edge and pressed it flat against the wall. She would not give Victor the confrontation he wanted. Anger could be rewritten as instability. A raised voice could become a reason to question her readiness. So she found another gym that rented its ring by the hour. The fee consumed most of what she earned, cleaning Victor's building, but she trained there every Tuesday morning while her mother attended physical therapy nearby. She worked with experienced partners, recorded each session, and kept the dates in her notebook. Her movement was not as fast as it had been at 28. It was more economical. Denise wasted fewer punches, protected her balance, and recognized openings before younger fighters understood they had created them. Years earlier, she had defeated 2 athletes Victor trained. He never mentioned those bouts during his public speeches. Victor's private fear was not that Denise would embarrass herself. It was that she would prove his sponsored athlete had not earned the position he was selling. The tournament's principal sponsor had tied its largest payment to national broadcast exposure. Victor had already promised that exposure to the fighter under his management. Her posters were printed. Interviews had been arranged. A clothing campaign depended on her appearing in the final bout. Denise's ranking threatened a deal Victor had treated as complete. 2 weeks later, a commission review team visited the gym to confirm equipment standards and collect preliminary fighter information. Aaron Bell was among them, carrying a tablet and a stack of forms. Denise recognized him from a licensing seminar, though they had never spoken. Victor gathered the active fighters near the ring and introduced each one with polished enthusiasm. Denise remained by the locker room entrance with a spray bottle and cleaning cloth. Aaron glanced at her, then at the list on his tablet. "Ward," he asked. "Denise Ward." Victor answered before she could. "She works maintenance." Aaron checked the screen again. "I have a current fighter license under that name." "Technically current," Victor said. "She isn't competing." Denise's hand paused against the door. Aaron addressed her directly. "Are you inactive by choice?" Victor's voice dropped. "Denise, the West locker room still needs attention." The other officials were listening now. So were 6 fighters near the ring. Denise could have exposed the false ranking mark in that moment, but she possessed only a photograph of an internal card. Victor could claim it had been an early draft or an ordinary clerical correction. If she accused him without the submitted file, he would learn exactly what she knew and bury the trail more carefully. "I'm maintaining my clearance," she told Aaron. It was the narrowest, truthful answer she could give. Aaron studied her for a moment, then entered something on his tablet. Victor guided the team toward his office. As he passed Denise, he spoke without facing her. "You almost made a serious mistake." "No," she said. "I almost answered a question." That evening, Victor assigned her the dirtiest work in the building. He made her scrub storage room flooring stained by years of neglected equipment. He also removed her access to the staff refrigerator and told the receptionist that Denise was not to receive personal calls through the gym. The punishments were small enough to sound petty if she complained. Together, they formed a warning. At home, her mother noticed the chemical burns beginning along Denise's fingers. "You're wearing gloves, aren't you? They tear sometimes." Her mother reached across the kitchen table and held Denise's hand. The right side of her body remained weak after the stroke, but her grip had improved. "You gave up enough for me," she said. Denise gently withdrew her hand. "I didn't give anything up. I changed the schedule." Neither woman believed that entirely. A medical invoice sat unipenned beside the sugar bowl. Rent was due in 6 days. Walking away from Victor's gym would protect Denise's pride, but it could cost her mother the therapy sessions that were finally restoring movement to her arm. Staying carried a different cost. The next morning, Denise checked the commission portal. The preliminary tournament bracket had been submitted 3 days ahead of schedule. Her name was absent. The portal displayed only active selections, not the eligibility notes used to exclude everyone else. To see those, Denise needed the underlying commission file or a formal review triggered before the final card locked. She called the records desk. The clerk explained that the promoter had listed her as medically unavailable. Because Denise was not yet confirmed for a bout, the notation did not automatically generate an appeal notice. "Who submitted that status?" Denise asked. "We can't attribute internal entries over the phone. My clearance is active." "Yes, that is what our licensing system shows." 2 commission systems now carried opposite versions of the same woman. Denise wrote down the date, time, and exact wording of the call. Then she opened the photograph of the ranking card on her phone. The handwritten mark Victor had made weeks earlier matched the status now entered in the tournament file. She finally had a pattern, but not yet the record that could prove who created it. At the gym that night, Victor was celebrating the release of the preliminary bracket. His sponsored fighter stood beneath the main poster, while a photographer captured Victor raising her arm. When the camera lowered, he saw Denise waiting near his office. "I want my status corrected," she said. "You weren't selected. That isn't the same as being medically unavailable." Victor closed the office door behind him, leaving them in the hallway. "You have a sick mother, overdue bills, and a body that has already given this sport enough," he said. "Take the cleaning job and let the professionals manage the card." Denise understood then how carefully he had studied her burdens. He had mistaken knowledge of her life for ownership of it. She removed the silver license from her pocket. "My name is attached to that record," she said. "You don't get to decide that a lie is harmless because I need the paycheck." Victor's expression sharpened. "If you challenge the bracket," he replied, "you'll lose more than a place on the card." Denise returned the license to her pocket. She could not walk away now. Victor had not merely denied her an opportunity. He had placed a false medical judgment into an official process, one that could follow her long after the tournament ended. And somewhere inside the commission system was the original entry that would show exactly whose hands had put it there. Denise submitted a correction request through the commission portal that same night. She kept it narrow. She did not accuse Victor of fraud or demand a place in the tournament. She stated that her license and medical clearance were active, while the preliminary bracket listed her as unavailable. She requested that the conflicting status be reviewed before the final card locked. The response arrived the following afternoon. The tournament promoter had classified the issue as a selection dispute, not a licensing error. Unless the promoter voluntarily amended the bracket, Denise would need to present her challenge during the official weigh-in review. That gave Victor control of the first decision. Denise found him beside the ring after his sponsored fighter finished a filmed training session. 2 reporters and several gym members were still nearby. "My status correction was sent to you," Denise said. Victor wiped the sponsored fighter's gloves with a clean towel and denied. "You can deny the bout. You can't leave false medical information in the file." He smiled toward the nearest reporter. "Denise has been struggling with the difference between being licensed and being competitive." A few heads shifted in her direction. Victor continued before she could answer. "We respect everything she did years ago, but this tournament is not a nostalgia event." The words were carefully chosen. He did not call her unqualified. He called her old, without saying the word, then wrapped the insult in concern. Denise held his gaze. "Correct the status. The bracket is accurate. Then give me the submitted eligibility page." Victor passed the towel to an assistant. "Commission files aren't cleaning room reading." The reporter knee arrested them lowered his phone, uncomfortable now. Victor's sponsored fighter said nothing. Denise walked away without giving Victor a sharper scene to use against her. Her restraint did not protect her job. At the end of the shift, an envelope waited inside her locker. Victor had suspended her from the gym for creating a disruptive workplace environment. She would receive no hours until after the tournament. Denise calculated the damage before she reached the parking lot. 3 missed weeks meant half the rent. It meant postponing one of her mother's therapy appointments and asking the pharmacy whether a prescription could be split across 2 payments. Victor had found the exact amount of pressure most likely to make her surrender. At home, Denise placed the suspension notice beneath the unopened medical invoice. Her mother sat at the table practicing how to lift a glass with her weakened hand. "What happened at work?" she asked. Denise had never told her about the tournament, but there was no harmless version left. She explained the ranking card, the false medical status, and the correction request. She expected her mother to worry about money. Instead, her mother asked, "Did you earn the right to be considered?" "Yes." "Then why are you speaking as if asking them to tell the truth is selfish?" Denise had no answer. Her mother pushed the silver fight license across the table. She had found it in Denise's jacket while sorting laundry. "When you were 10, you came home after those boys laughed at your hand-me-down shoes," she said. "You asked me to buy new ones. I couldn't. So you cleaned the old pair and wore them back the next day. That was different. No, you just had less to lose." The following morning, Denise visited the commission office in person. Aaron Bell met her at the public counter. He remembered their exchange at Victor's gym and pulled up her correction request. "The promoter says you were never an active tournament selection," he explained. "If that is true, a trainer can recommend another fighter." "I understand. Then what exactly are you challenging?" "The reason attached to my removal." Denise placed a printed copy of the internal ranking card photograph on the counter. Her name appeared in the qualifying column with the false medical notation beside it. Aaron examined the page. "This isn't a commission document. No, It shows the same status appeared inside Victor's gym before the preliminary bracket was filed. Do you have the original? Victor does. Aaron enlarged the digital photograph and checked the date it had been taken. The image predated the promoter's submission by more than a month. It was a clue, but not enough. Victor could claim that the card recorded an early misunderstanding. He could say another employee wrote the notation or that Denise's medical status had been corrected before the official filing. The commission file would have to establish what was submitted when it changed and whose credentials authorized the entry. Aaron entered a request for an internal comparison. The first result weakened Denise's case. The current eligibility screen showed no medical restriction beside her name. Instead, it listed her as an unselected alternate. Someone corrected it, Aaron said, after I complained. Possibly. Or the system synchronized late. Denise studied the screen. If the false notation had disappeared, Victor could argue there was no remaining injury to correct. The dispute would shrink into a disagreement over tournament selection exactly as he intended. Aaron lowered his voice. Archived versions are preserved, but retrieving one requires a formal eligibility challenge tied to the live event. You can request it at weigh-in before the card locks. And if the archived file confirms the false status, then the commission decides whether it affected the bracket. Denise collected the ranking card copy. What if the promoter locks the card early? He cannot lock it before the official window. But once that window closes, replacing a confirmed fighter becomes much harder. The weigh-in was 9 days away. By the time Denise returned home, Victor had sent an offer through the gym's payroll service. He would restore her cleaning shifts, pay the suspended hours, and contribute $500 toward her mother's therapy. There was one condition. Denise had to sign a statement acknowledging that she had never been selected for the tournament and that any medical notation she saw was an unofficial drafting error. The money would solve the immediate crisis. It would protect the apartment and keep her mother's therapy schedule intact. It would also give Victor a document he could use against her at the weigh-in. Denise read the statement twice, then placed it beside the medical invoice. That evening, her mother's therapist called to confirm the next appointment. Denise stared at the balance in her banking app while the therapist waited for an answer. Cancel Friday, she finally said. Keep next Tuesday. After the call, Denise sat alone at the kitchen table. Accepting Victor's offer would have been easy to explain as love. Refusing it felt dangerously close to choosing her own pride over her mother's care. Her mother entered slowly with one hand braced against the wall. If you sign his lie for me, she said, then he gets to use both of us. Denise tore the statement once down the middle. The next day, she borrowed training space from the gym that had rented to her on Tuesdays. The owner allowed her to pay after the tournament. Denise completed 6 controlled rounds with licensed partners while a coach recorded her condition and compliance with the commission's safety limits. She was not trying to prove she could perform a miracle. She was preserving the readiness Victor had tried to erase. After training, Denise uploaded her weigh-in challenge. She attached only the 2 items that mattered: her request for the archived commission eligibility file and the ranking card copy showing when the false status first appeared. Then she registered to attend the official weigh-in under her active license. Victor called within an hour. You think walking into that room will put you on the card? No, Denise replied. I think the record will show what you did. You won't get near the review table. I already have a hearing number. For several seconds only, his breathing came through the phone. Then his voice softened. You should ask yourself what happens to your family when this ends badly. Denise ended the call and wrote down the time. 7 days remained before the card locked. Victor still controlled the gym, the promoter, and the public story. But he no longer controlled whether Denise would enter the room. And before the weigh-in began, someone inside the commission office made one final change to her eligibility file. By the morning of the weigh-in, Victor had arranged the room so Denise would appear out of place before she spoke. Credentialed fighters entered through a sponsor backdrop. Trainers stood beside the scale. Reporters gathered behind a marked line near the registration tables. Denise's name was missing from the access list. A security worker directed her toward the service entrance, where catering staff and maintenance employees were checking in. Denise showed her active silver fight license and the hearing number attached to her challenge. The worker studied both, then called Aaron Bell. Erin came to the entrance with a tablet in one hand. She's registered for an eligibility review, he confirmed. She comes through here. Victor watched Denise enter. His sponsored fighter was already warming up beneath the bright lights, dressed in new gear bearing the tournament sponsor's colors. Victor had spent the morning telling reporters that the card was settled and the weigh-in would be routine. Denise's presence made that promise uncertain. He crossed the room before she reached the review table. "You're not weighing in," he said. "I'm presenting my challenge. That doesn't make you a tournament fighter." Denise did not argue. She handed Erin the hearing number and placed the ranking card copy on the table. Erin checked the final card countdown. 31 minutes remained. The commission had not yet delivered the archived eligibility file. Without it, Denise possessed evidence that Victor had written a false status inside his gym, but not proof that he had carried that status into the official bracket. Victor understood the difference. He called the tournament coordinator and 2 sponsor representatives closer. Then he announced that Denise was delaying the event over an internal gym misunderstanding. "This woman was never promised a bout," he said. "She found a draft ranking sheet and built a grievance around it." Denise kept her attention on Erin. "Has the archive request been accepted?" "It is still processing." Victor gave a short laugh. "There is nothing to process." One of the sponsor representatives examined the ranking card copy. Victor took it from him and held it up for the nearby reporters. "This is a photograph of a training note," he said. "Anyone could have written on it." "It was in your gym," Denise replied. "So are hundreds of scraps of paper." You initialed the card. Victor lowered the page before the cameras could focus on the bottom corner. His sponsored fighter approached the scale, but the coordinator asked her to wait until the challenge was resolved. A murmur moved through the room. Camera lights began blinking. Victor's public patience disappeared. He faced Denise and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You clean my locker rooms. That does not give you ownership of my fight card." The insult landed exactly as he intended. Several people recognized Denise now not as the veteran whose license remained active, but as the woman they had seen carrying trash bags through the gym. Victor took the silver license from the table and inspected it theatrically. "This proves she paid a fee," he said. "It does not prove she belongs in the main event." A trainer near the wall laughed. Victor joined him, then placed the license beside the cleaning key Denise still carried on her ring. "The commission licenses hundreds of people who will never compete at this level. We cannot reopen a professional card every time an employee feels overlooked." Denise's jaw tightened, but her voice remained level. "My challenge is not based on my feelings." "Then withdraw it." "No." Victor leaned closer. "You are suspended from the gym. If you continue disrupting this event, the suspension becomes permanent." The countdown dropped below 27 minutes. Denise thought of the apartment table, the medical invoice, and the therapy appointment she had canceled. Losing the job permanently would not wound only her. Victor knew that. He reached into his folder and removed the unsigned statement he had previously offered her. "I tried to help Denise privately," he told the room. "Full back pay, additional support for her family. She rejected it because she wanted a public spectacle. The humiliation changed shape. I was no longer presenting her as merely too old to fight. He was presenting her as a selfish daughter who had sacrificed her mother's care for attention." A reporter asked Denise whether the offer had included money for medical expenses. "Yes," she answered. "And you refused it. It required me to confirm something that wasn't true." Victor spread his hands. "The statement says she was never selected. She wasn't. It also calls the false medical notation a drafting error. Because that is what it was." "Then open the archived file." Victor's mouth hardened. Erin checked his tablet. No archive had arrived. The tournament coordinator warned that the weigh-in process needed to begin. If Denise could not establish a material eligibility error, her challenge would be closed and the existing card confirmed. Victor slid the statement toward her. "Sign it now," he said softly. "I'll restore your hours today." The room waited. Denise's mother had needed help buttoning her blouse that morning. Before Denise left, she had asked whether the silver license felt heavy in her pocket. Denise had said no. Now with the cameras aimed at her and the countdown running, it felt heavier than metal. It carried every bill she could not pay and every hour of work Victor could take from her. Denise moved the statement aside. "I am not asking you to award me a fight because I clean a gym," she said. I am asking the commission to examine a record because someone used my medical status to remove me. Victor pointed towards the exit. She is finished here. Security approached, but Erin raised one hand. She has an active hearing until the window closes. Victor's sponsored fighter spoke for the first time. Can we just weigh in? Victor answered without facing her. We will. He opened the folder beneath his hand, exposing the edge of Denise's boat number before quickly closing it again. Denise saw it. So did Erin. Where did that folder come from? Erin asked. Promoter working papers. Place it on the table. Victor refused. It has confidential information for other fighters. Erin requested the folder a second time. Victor drew it against his jacket and insisted that only the current digital bracket mattered. The action created more suspicion than the folder itself. Erin called the commission's record supervisor and asked for an emergency archive release. He gave Denise's license number, the hearing number, and the exact submission date shown on the preliminary bracket. 24 minutes remained. Victor began telling reporters that Denise had a history of refusing professional advice. He described her years away from competition as proof that she was emotionally attached to a career that had already ended. Then he held up the silver license between two fingers. Some people keep a license, he said, because accepting reality is harder. The same trainer laughed again. Denise reached out and Victor dropped the license onto the table instead of placing it in her hand. It struck the wood and spun once beneath the camera lights. That was the moment the room would remember the decorated trainer mocking a veteran fighter with the very credential the commission had approved. Denise stopped the license with her palm. Retrieve the file, she told Erin. Victor gave one final dismissive smile. There is no file that puts a cleaner on this card. A notification sounded from Erin's tablet. He read the first line, then checked Denise's license number again. The archived eligibility file had arrived. Across the top was a red audit warning indicating that Denise's status had been changed after her medical clearance was approved. The change had not come from the licensing division. It had come through the tournament promoter's authorized account. Erin raised his eyes toward the folder Victor was still holding. Do not leave this room, he said. And for the first time that morning, Victor Lowe had no answer ready. Victor recovered quickly enough to pretend the audit warning meant nothing. An account flag is not evidence, he said. Promoters update fighter information all the time. Erin placed his tablet flat on the review table. Not after the licensing division approves a medical clearance. The system makes errors. Then we'll examine the history. Victor requested that the review continue in private. He said the file contained protected medical information and accused Denise of creating a spectacle for reporters. Denise did not ask anyone to leave. I authorized the commission to discuss my eligibility status in this hearing, she said. Nothing else. That decision took away Victor's last excuse to close the room. Erin opened the archived commission eligibility file. The first page showed Denise's license number, verified identity, active ranking, and medical clearance. Every required examination had been accepted before the preliminary bracket was submitted. Beside her name was the original status, eligible main boat consideration. The tournament coordinator stopped checking the countdown. Victor pointed at the wording. Consideration is not selection. No one said it was, Denise replied. Keep reading. Erin moved to the audit history. 3 days after Denise's medical clearance was approved, her status had been changed to medically unavailable. The entry carried no physician's name, no commission case number, and no supporting restriction. It had been made through the tournament promoter's authorized account. Victor folded his arms. Multiple people used that account. A voice came through Erin's tablet. The commission's record supervisor, Mara Chen, had joined the review remotely. She explained that promoter accounts required individual verification codes for sensitive eligibility changes. The code attached to Denise's entry had been issued to Victor's registered phone. The room understood before Victor did. The reporter who had asked Denise about her mother lowered his microphone. The trainer, who had laughed at the silver license, moved away from the wall. One sponsor representative quietly removed Victor's event credential from the photograph he had been preparing to post. Victor stared at the audit line. That still doesn't prove I entered it. Mara's answer came without emotion. The code was verified 11 seconds before the change. The session originated from the registered device used for your bracket submissions. Victor reached for the tablet. Erin pulled it beyond his hand. There may have been an administrative reason, Victor said. Denise had been inactive for years. I was protecting the event. Medical status is not yours to invent, Aaron replied. Victor changed his defense. He said Denise had told him her mother's illness prevented her from committing to the tournament. He claimed he marked her unavailable to avoid exposing private family circumstances. Denise's hand rested beside the silver license. My mother's condition did not fail a medical exam, she said. I did not withdraw. You knew you couldn't manage the schedule. I attended every required assessment. You worked nights in my gym because your competitive career was over. I worked nights because my family needed me. The distinction traveled through the room more sharply than any raised voice could have. Victor had treated the work as proof that Denise belonged below the fighters he promoted. Denise had treated it as one more responsibility carried alongside her training. Mara continued through the file. 20 hours after Denise submitted her correction request, the false medical status had been removed. It was replaced with unselected alternate. That second change used the same verification method and originated from the same registered device. Victor had not corrected the record when he learned it was false. He had rewritten it to hide what came before. The countdown showed 19 minutes. Victor pointed toward the current bracket. None of this changes the selected card. The sponsored fighter has already been confirmed. Aaron checked the original eligibility order. Denise's name had not merely appeared among possible alternates. Before the false status was entered, she held the highest eligible ranking among the fighters available for the bout. Victor's sponsored athlete was listed immediately below her. Removing Denise had advanced the sponsored fighter into the main event position. Victor's face tightened. Rankings are only one factor. Correct, Aaron said, which is why the promoter was required to document any discretionary replacement. There was no documented replacement decision inside the eligibility file, only the false medical entry. Victor tried to redirect attention toward Denise's age, her time away from competition, and the risk of changing a televised card so close to weigh-in. Each argument made his position worse. None explained why he had altered a protected eligibility status or hidden the earlier version after Denise challenged it. Then Aaron asked Denise for the supporting ranking card. She placed the copy on the table herself. Victor immediately dismissed it as an unofficial gym document. This time, no one followed his lead. The qualifying order on the card matched the commission file exactly. Denise appeared above the sponsored fighter. The handwritten medical notation beside Denise's name was made more than a month before the preliminary bracket submission, and Victor's initials appeared at the bottom. Mara asked Aaron to hold the copy closer to the tablet camera. The notation matches the status later entered through the promoter account, she said. Preserve that image with the hearing record. Victor reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. I'm calling the promoter. You are the authorized promoter representative for this submission, Aaron reminded him. I'm calling counsel. You may do that. Victor began walking toward the doorway. Aaron blocked his path without touching him. You were instructed not to leave. This is absurd. You're letting a cleaner hijack a sanctioned event. Denise picked up the silver license. No, she said. I brought the record to the people responsible for it. You are the one who put my job on trial because you thought nobody would examine yours. Victor demanded that his sponsored fighter confirm Denise had never trained with the tournament group. The younger woman stood beside the scale, trapped inside a decision she had not created. She removed her gloves. Victor told us Denise failed clearance, she said. That's all I was told. Her statement did not accuse him of changing the file. It did not need to. The false status had shaped what everyone in the gym believed. Victor's control of the room collapsed. He accused the commission of damaging a sponsor relationship, threatened legal action, and insisted the tournament could not proceed without his cooperation. Aaron waited until Victor stopped speaking. Your trainer and corner credentials are suspended for this event, he said. Your promoter access is frozen pending an emergency commission review. A security worker removed the credential from Victor's neck. The consequence was immediate, but it was not the end of the process. Mara stated that the commission would preserve the account history interview. Everyone with access and refer the falsified eligibility entry for formal disciplinary review. Victor would receive notice and an opportunity to respond. The sponsor representatives conferred near the backdrop. Within minutes, they suspended Victor's appearance obligations pending the commission's findings. They did not cancel their support for the event or punish the sponsored fighter. Responsibility remained where it belonged. 17 minutes remained before the card locked. Aaron addressed Denise. The archived file shows that the false status materially changed the eligibility order. What remedy are you requesting? This was the moment when Denise could have demanded an apology. Victor's removal from the building, or compensation for the shifts he had taken from her. She asked for none of those things. Correct my record, she said. Restore the position I earned. Let the commission decide the card using the truthful file. Aaron reopened the main event review. The tournament coordinator compared both fighters' rankings, current clearances, contracted weight limits, and completed assessments. Denise met every requirement. The only barrier had been the medical restriction that never existed. At 14 minutes, the coordinator restored Denise to the main event position. No one cheered. The decision was too serious for celebration. Victor's sponsored fighter was offered the alternate position and a guaranteed place on a later televised card she accepted without blaming Denise. Denise moved toward the scale. Victor stood near the exit without his credential, watching the woman he had introduced as a cleaner remove her shoes and gray tracksuit jacket. She stepped onto the platform. The official adjusted the balance weighted and announced that Denise had made the contracted weight. Aaron entered the number into the corrected bracket. Then he placed the commission eligibility file beside the ranking card copy and locked both into the hearing record. Denise stepped down and returned the silver license to her pocket. She had not been rescued by a lucky discovery. She had photographed the first false mark, verified her status, preserved her readiness, rejected Victor's payment, filed the challenge, and demanded the archived record while the window remained open. The file exposed what Victor had done, but Denise was the reason anyone opened it in time. Victor Lowe was escorted from the weigh-in room without his event credential. I was not arrested and no one announced a permanent punishment before the evidence had been reviewed. The commission froze his trainer and promoter authority, preserved the account history, and opened an emergency disciplinary case. The event continued without him. As independent licensed trainer agreed to work Denise's corner. He did not promise her victory or offer a dramatic speech. He checked her raps, reviewed the opponent's habits, and asked one practical question. "Are you ready for the bout?" Denise answered, "I've been ready." That evening, her mother watched the broadcast from their apartment with the therapist who had offered to stay after the final appointment of the day. Denise entered the arena without a celebrity entourage. The silver license remained inside her locker because she no longer needed to hold it as proof for anyone in the building. Her name was displayed on the corrected card where it should have been from the beginning. The fight was not easy. Her opponent was younger, faster, and fully qualified. Denise lost the early exchanges while adjusting to the pace. She did not transform into an unbeatable hero simply because Victor had wronged her. She won by doing what 18 years of competition had taught her to do. Denise protected her balance, waited for wasted movement, and controlled the final rounds with timing instead of speed. When the judges returned a close, unanimous decision in her favor, she did not climb the ropes or shout toward the cameras. She thanked her opponent. Then she faced the broadcast interviewer. "Victor said you didn't belong here," the interviewer said. "What do you want to say to him now?" Denise could have used the moment to humiliate him. She did not. "This was never about proving that cleaners can fight," she replied. "Work does not lower a person's rank. A lie does." The clip traveled farther than any insult Victor had delivered at the weigh-in. Denise's fight purse covered the overdue rent, restored her mother's canceled therapy sessions, and paid the medical balance that had sat beside the sugar bowl for weeks. It did not make them wealthy. It gave them room to breathe. 3 days after the event, the gym that had rented Denise training space offered her steady work. She would supervise 2 evening classes, help maintain the equipment, and close the building 3 nights a week. The owner made the terms clear. "I was not offering charity." Members had been asking for Denise since the broadcast, and younger fighters needed someone who understood both discipline and patience. Denise accepted. She still wiped down mats and emptied bins when necessary. She never treated honest work as something beneath her. The difference was that no one used the work to decide what else she was allowed to become. 6 weeks later, Victor appeared before the commission disciplinary panel with legal counsel. He argued that the false status had been an administrative shortcut. The preserved audit history, Denise's eligibility file, and the ranking card copy told a more deliberate story. The panel found that he had entered unsupported medical information, used it to alter a sanctioned bracket, and changed the entry after Denise challenged it. His trainer and promoter credentials were suspended for 18 months. He was fined, ordered to complete ethics and records training, and prohibited from accessing fighter medical status fields when he became eligible to apply for reinstatement. The sponsor ended its agreement with him. Several fighters left his gym, including the athlete he had favored. She later competed on the televised card the commission had guaranteed her and began working with a trainer who did not need to damage another fighter's record to advance hers. Victor's consequences were serious, but they were procedural. He had the right to appeal, and the commission published the final findings only after the review was complete. Denise never attended the hearing. Aaron called her afterward and asked whether she wanted a written apology entered into the public record. "I want the corrected file to remain public where the rules allow," she said. The truth matters longer than an apology. The commission changed its tournament procedures before the next season. Medical status changes now required confirmation from the licensing division, and fighters received an automatic notice whenever a promoter entered a restriction beside their name. No single trainer could quietly repeat what Victor had done. At home, Denise's mother continued improving. She regained enough strength to button her own clothes and carry a cup from the kitchen to the table without help. One morning, she found Denise studying the silver license before leaving for work. "You still think it's heavy?" she asked. Denise smiled. "Only when I let someone else decide what it means." She no longer kept it hidden behind cleaning rags. At the new gym, the license hung inside her locker beside her class schedule and her mother's therapy appointments. It was scratched from years of use, but the seal remained visible. Months later, Denise stayed after an evening class to help a nervous amateur fighter practice footwork. When the young woman became frustrated, Denise stopped the drill and handed her a towel. "Being overlooked can make you rush," Denise told her. "Don't fight their opinion. Keep your record honest and be ready when the door opens." After the fighter left, Denise turned off the ring lights one row at a time. She picked up a mop near the ropes and cleaned a narrow strip of canvas where someone had spilled water. Then she placed it back against the wall, opened her locker, and touched the edge of the silver license. There was dignity in the license. There was dignity in the mop. The shame had belonged only to the man who believed one could erase the other. What would you have done if telling the truth could cost the job your family depended on? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe if you believe dignity should never be decided by someone else's rank.